The wheels touched down with a bump, and then there was the rattle of rubber tires on a cobbled road. Miria slowly brought the van to a stop. The sudden return of gravity had caused the squid to fall onto Edryk, and in a panic it had wrapped itself around his face. As the two of them struggled to right themselves, Miria stepped out into the bright sunlight. The soothing sounds and perfumed scent of an idyllic woodland. The cobblestones beneath them were polished granite, carving a shimmering pink furrow through a forest of trees for which she had no name. Their leaves were emerald, and the air thick with sweet-scented pollen. In the shade of the wood, jeweled butterflies and shimmering dragonflies darted about, pursued by birds with unearthly plumage. Without asking, and without effort, the all-knowing's understanding flooded into her.
This plane is Amber, the timeless paradise at the heart of creation. It was here that the Demiurge and his family shaped reality as we understood it, singing the universe into creation. The other planes are shadows, echoes of this place. And the things that dwell here are powerful and terrible. We had best be on our guard.
As Edryk finished stuffing the squid back in the oilskin for his own safety, he added in his own bit of lore from the Order of the Stars. Amber is the seed, the organizing principle. Like a freezing jewel dipped into a pond, the water ripples out from the jewel, and frost forms along the surface. Order is that frost, the water primordial chaos. I always thought of that as some sort of abstruse alchemy lesson. Just behind the van there was a great structure of stone off the side of the road, bound in brass and covered with runes. It still crackled with magical energy from where they had just passed through it.
Well, at least we know what to look for at the other end. We should get going, though. I get the feeling we're not going to be particularly welcome here.
Welcome to Swords Against Madness, an experiment in gonzo storytelling and solo role-playing. I'm playing a solo game of Swords and Wizardry, amplified by other classic role-playing games like Traveller, and accompanied by solo role-playing tools like the Mythic Game Master emulator. First I play the game, then I turn it into a psychedelic sword and planet audio drama for your entertainment. Swords and Wizardry is based on the original 1974 through 1977 rules to Dungeons & Dragons. It is trippy, fast-paced, and lethal, just the way I like it. There will be no protection for player characters when the dice decide that their number is up. But I do keep this story PG, or at least what passed for PG in the 1980s. If you didn't see it in Temple of Doom, Goonies, or Gremlins, you won't hear about it here. So reload that three-bladed sword. Get comfortable in your studded leather kirtle or your chainmail bikini. Fire up the wizard van. It's time to get weird. The glittering road wound like a river. Gentle curves left and right here and there, but mostly straight through a forest of emerald green. They passed at least two more of the strange pillared bronze and stone structures, doorways between planes of existence, set by the side of the road like monuments or rest stops. Some included statues or placards in a strange language that none of them could read, but all of them virtually humming with eldritch power. The road wasn't going exactly in the direction the squid told them to, but it was close enough that they assumed that eventually they would come to their destination. Or if they passed it, they would be able to fly to it without too much effort. The squid's lazy tentacle pointed in the general direction they needed to go, like a strange, slick needle to a compass. There was clearly night and day here, but they saw no sun nor moon, only a gradually shifting overlight. Eventually they took a turn to what they presumed was the north, and came to the crest of a rise. Off in the distance, on top of a great rugged tor, was a castle. Not a castle, the castle. As if any other fortress, any other palace, any other castle was a pale imitation of this thing. Its impossible geometry climbed well into the sky, its walls made of smooth jade and lapis lazuli. Subtle architectural flourishes made it look ornate even from miles away. None of them could look at it without wanting to weep, and without longing to meet those who were inside. Only the fact that several of the towers were shattered, that there were scorch marks on the outside, that the trees nearest it stood as charred skeletons, and the clear charnel remains of some recent battle sat at the base of the cliff told them that there was something amiss with the place. That whoever ruled it now, however wondrous or terrible, was not a being to be trifled with. And then the road bent eastward, climbing up some great hill, and the castle fell into their rear view, leaving with them a sense of terrible loss as well as longing. Is that really something like the castle of the first gods? I'm not sure we're meant to know that. And even if we were, I'm not sure we could comprehend it. Everything about this place is more than it appears.
Personally, I'm glad we're not going anywhere near it. Whatever my heart says about that place, my head tells me it's nothing but danger. And the more powerful the person inside is, the more venomous they're likely to be.
That seems quite a harsh judgment.
It comes from experience. I've spent a lot of time in the company of people who ruled over entire worlds. Even the best ones were cruel and vicious when they needed to be. Often, even when they didn't need to.
Miria suddenly blushed and bit her lip. It was clear that she felt that she'd said too much. And then, with a quiet grunt, took hold of one of the 8 tracks sitting in the dash and jammed it in the player. She filled the van with the roar of defiant rock and roll music. Too alive, too raw, too imperfect to feel right in a place like this. And was glad for it.
Okay, let's get the hell out of here.
Are you ready for your next solo roleplay audio drama? Come and experience Roll, Ponder, and Play, a solo role-playing podcast dedicated to crafting compelling tales, thick with drama and danger, showcasing light against shadow, hope amidst sorrow, and determination beyond doubt. All from the barest of prompts. Come journey with me through realms of danger, shadow, and wonder at Roll, Ponder, and Play, where one roll can decide the fate of many things.
"63 years ago, the marketplace at Terak Nor Station was loud, cluttered, chaotic. When the station authority had collapsed years before, the vendors stopped worrying about who had authority to sell where. At first, the established merchants just kept their storefronts open, keeping their lights and their ever more sophisticated security systems online through battery power. And then, as their businesses failed, as they quit, as they were run off, or as they disappeared, empty storefronts got taken over by small groups. Every storefront eventually became part flea market, part art incubator, part bodega. And then they spilled out into the concourse. First it was fabricated kiosks, then makeshift kiosks out of PVC piping and cloth, then just mats and spaces marked out with tape. Then it was hawkers and dealers simply wandering up and down with kits and backpacks, shouting out their wares. Selling a dizzying array of contraband, weapons, tools, ship parts, bits of alien technology, ancient artifacts. If you wanted it, it could be bought at Tarak Nor. Big shops had only just returned as the last vestiges of law and order had faded from the station. Salvage dealers offering whole ships, transponder not included. Fabricators making armor and weapons to custom order with all the illegal modifications you could ask for. Pens full of sapient beings, sold for slaves or food as needed. It was the kind of place where syndicates, like the Trossi and the Blue Suns, could wave their flags openly, and known representatives from even shadier organizations could be found. The perfect place to disappear, or make someone else disappear. If you had need to cut someone's throat, you simply went through their wallet, took anything of value, and gave half to the nearest enforcer for the trouble. Miria both loved and hated the place. She loved the life, the vibrancy, the ebb and flow of living beings. On her right, a glittering insectoid merchant offering recordings of other people's senses, an experience better than life, he claimed. On her left, a shady booth where a small blue furry creature offered crystals he claimed could amplify anyone's connection to the warp. Over there, a trio of glittering, power-armored thugs surrounding a short, fat, fleshy creature, selling the jailbreak codes to Starship navigation equipment. A massive snail-like alien with 4 club-like appendages recited poetry interpreted by some kind of device, his iridescent shell shifting colors as he moved and swayed to the rhythm of his speech. And up ahead, her favorite shy, green-skinned flower merchant. Sure, her best wares were psychoactive, but some she sold just because they were beautiful, and felt that even a place like this needed its dose of beauty. Compared to the empty, hard angles of the crystal palaces she'd been raised in, this felt unbelievably alive. How could you feel the thronging life force around you and not feel at least a little in love? But the hate, that came easy too. The antivirus system in her gauntlet had flickered for the 18th time that day, warning about another thwarted intrusion attempt. And she'd had to check her accounts just to be sure that nothing had been touched. Any hard currency she kept tucked down the front of her shirt, where a would-be thief would have to get very forward in order to rob her. Her teeth still ground every time she remembered reaching for her grandfather's inro and finding it, and all of the pressed indium bars that were in it gone. That had been years ago. It took a few hard lessons for her to learn the intuition, the caution, the comfortable paranoia it takes to get by in a place like Tarak Nor. And she could only ride the waves of that living chaos for so long before she got tired of checking to make sure everything was still there. And the void began calling her again. Right now she was feeling the itch, that sense at the base of her spine that told her something wasn't quite right. An uncomfortable feeling that crept in her gut and made her unconsciously reach down to scratch where once the weight of her grandfather's inro had sat on her hip. She stopped at the wildly cluttered booth of a junk drone merchant, looking over his cameras and rotodrones. Carefully watching through the dark glass eyes of the drones, she scanned the crowd until she spotted them. The being was mostly humanoid, tall and slender. Its outer hull was made of cloth, stylized to look something like the common spacesuits worn by asteroid miners. Its 4-fingered hands covered in a coating of leather that could be mistaken for gloves. Even the head at first glance looked like a stylized helmet. But she knew better. The Zaeth were to a one cyborgs. Their original flesh and blood bodies had been so small, so frail compared to the rest of the universe, they elected as a whole race to have their brains implanted into larger, stronger synthetic bodies. Ones shaped like the majority of the races in space, so that they could more easily use alien technology. In the process, each and every one of them had attained a lifespan of thousands of years. But the cost to their society remained a cautionary tale for every other species dabbling with bionic augmentation. There were no eyes behind that smooth glass faceplate, only scanners, and she could feel them, the subtle tingle of ultrasound brushing her skin. This one was watching her. Miria picked up a small, chrome-plated rotodrome and paid the impatient merchant a handful of credits, keying it to her gauntlet, and then pushed back into the crowd, aiming for where the people were their densest, loudest, most chaotic. With the tiny machine in her arm, she tried her best to look distracted as she tapped code into her gauntlet. In seconds, she had a visual from the cameras placed carefully over her shoulder. She could see the Zaeth at a careful distance, matching her pace, flowing like liquid through the crowd. His cloth outer coating shifting and changing color like a chameleon, helping him blend into the fashion of the crowd as she moved through it. A subtle search of the local databases provided no identity. No name, no record to go with this particular shell, which was more information than she needed. The panic came to her arms first, then rose in her gorge like bile. She could feel her breath begin to hitch, and then she blew it out and willed herself to remain calm.
Who is it? What could he possibly want with me? He's got to be working with one of the syndicates, or worse.
She grabbed hold of the panic, rode it for a moment, and then let herself slip free of it, thinking back to her grandfather's lessons about the ancient Bushido, ancient warriors who had studied Buddhism for a simple purpose, to stop thinking. Because in a dangerous situation, thinking gets you killed. Acting is the thing. Letting go of thought and letting intuition flow. That's what she needed now. She let herself feel the rhythm of the crowd, to flow with it. Catching strains of street music from somewhere further into the bazaar, she began to dance with it. And as she did so, the people around her did the same. Her bobbing steps in rhythm with the crowd let her move through it faster, easier. Even the incredibly nimble Zaeth had trouble keeping up. Past stalls of mystics, bloodletters, artists, junk dealers. The antiseptic smell of alien street food. Past a dealer advertising jars full of bits of xenofauna he claimed were cures for all manner of ailments. And finally into an alley. A trash-strewn access hallway that had gathered litter, and then more litter, and eventually everyone had just decided to throw their garbage into it. The walls here were cracked and rusted. Exposed piping and conduits hung from the ceiling. An infestation of some kind of small space varmint scattered as she entered, and wove between trash heaps. The Zaeth was quiet, graceful. If she hadn't been straining her ears for him, she'd have never heard him. She quickened her pace, letting a staccato of frightened breaths that she wished were a lie escape her on purpose, and then ducked down behind the husk of a broken robot. The Zaeth glid around a nearby trash heap, a small sonic weapon charging in his hand. It knew she was hiding. She knew it knew she was hiding. She could feel the ultrasound sweep the area. Then she fired up the motors of the drone and threw it at a steep angle towards the creature. There was a satisfying crunch of metal as the machine collided with his glass faceplate. The Zaeth flailed his arms trying to get the pest out of his face, giving Miria just enough time to call the warp. A bolt of shivering energy leapt from her hand, swirled around the robot, and punched through the already damaged faceplate. The biomechanical frame of the Zaeth suddenly went slack, and it crashed down with the rest of the junk in the alley. Devoid of any instructions except to fly, the drone careened off a few walls, crashed into an old light fixture, throwing the alley into semi-darkness, and then vanished off into the marketplace, to the sound of indignant shouts. Shaking, she threw herself down onto the plating next to the fallen cyborg, and wrenched the sonic gun out of his hand, checking its pockets or pouches for anything that might indicate who or what it was. She discovered a tiny crystalline pyramid in its pocket. She put it down on the fallen creature's belly, and pressed the play button. It took her a moment to place the face that suddenly appeared floating above her in the alleyway. Fine, elegant lines. Cool almond eyes of a soft brown. Perfectly coiffed hair. He looked hauntingly familiar. and then he stepped back from whatever camera he had been setting, and sat down in a chair she'd hoped to never see again. The woman next to him could have been her twin, if it weren't for a certain predatory set amongst the eyes that the two of them shared.
Hushy.
Greetings, Aunt Miria. If you are hearing this, then you have bested a Chintamakut assassin that I have sent after you. I am not disappointed. In fact, I was quite certain that you would hear this. I'm also sure that you're resourceful enough to know that the Chintamakut never work alone. That, even as we speak, his partner has been activated and will be seeking you out. Nor do the Chintamakut leave any job undone. I have used the contacts available to me as the new head of our household to ensure that there is no place you can run. No reputable syndicate that will give you shelter. No organization who will want to give you sanctuary. Your days of humiliating our family with your criminal enterprises is over. There is but one way you can survive this. You will return to Henkyo. You will prostrate yourself before me. You will confess the crimes I tell you to confess before the media. And then you will agree to a marriage that secures our families an advantage before returning to a quiet, implant-enforced retirement. No doubt, you are wondering why I would do these things. After all, you have shown no interest in several decades of dealing with our family. But I'm sure you know as well as I that I can brook no competition, however disinterested they may appear. Return home, or die in space like the wretched sprat you have made yourself.
Miria bit her tongue. She spat. She growled. Anything not to let tears come.
I never liked that snot-nosed brat anyway. And an augmented voice? Really? Oh, how badly did you spoil him?
But she wasn't fooling herself. Not even for a moment. An hour later, shaking, her mouth tasting of bile, Miria walked into the den that served as the Trossi recruitment center. She approached a hulking brute of a creature. Blue skin, horns, tusks. Like something out of a myth from her people's ancient past.
My name's Miria Okano. I have a gun, I have a ship, and I know how to sling the warp. And I need to cut a deal.
The great brute looked down at her, scowling.
I am Yongu. And you had better have an awfully impressive ship to come walking into here, thinking we have the need of someone like you, human.
One of the things I did that totally upped my D&D game was actually do a deep dive into Appendix N. That's the list of books at the end of the original Advanced Dungeons & Dragons 1st Edition Dungeon Master's Guide. That included a list of all the books that inspired Dungeons & Dragons. As someone who was born at the tail end of the 70s and grew up in the 80s, the idea of an existing fantasy genre that is separate from, say, Western or science fiction was something that was already deeply entrenched in the culture. I had a pretty clear idea of what went into a fantasy. In fact, I could have told you the formula for what makes a good fantasy pretty easily. What I didn't learn until I was studying English in university is that formula is quite deliberately constructed. It is the creation of Lester and Judy Lynn Del Rey, a married couple who were editors for Ballantine Books, and who were in charge of finding a way to harness the fever people had for Lord of the Rings and Star Trek at the time. Judy Lynn was put in charge of finding fresh science fiction, while Lester was put in charge of fantasy. These weren't terms that had any clear definition. Sure, people had described C.S. Lewis and J.R.R. Tolkien as fantasy, but it wasn't a concept that had its own clear idea. And so Lester Del Rey, when he established the submission guidelines for Ballantine Books' fantasy division, which eventually got spun off into Del Rey Books, he set the guidelines to create things that would feel a lot like J.R.R. Tolkien. A male protagonist, a world that is not Earth, prophecies and chosen heroes, dark lords. It was all designed to create a specific book that they knew would sell to fans of The Lord of the Rings, and didn't put much reference to the actual fantastical works out there. As a kid of the 80s, it was pretty easy to have already missed Michael Moorcock, Jack Vance, and Roger Zelazny. These creators were creating weird, surreal, fantastical, phantasmagorical stories long before you could have found a fantasy section in the bookstore. And because they had managed to establish themselves before the coming of the Del Rey formula, they often break every rule we might consider typical of fantasy. And it's where the true DNA of Dungeons & Dragons lies. We call the magic system of D&D the Vancian system for a reason. If you read any book from Abraham Merritt, you're going to recognize monsters, places, and spells, as well as conventions that now have permeated through the culture thanks to the popularity of D&D. If you want to know why certain monsters got to be killed by shooting them in the head, you have to go no further than to read The Face in the Abyss by Merritt. Not that these authors were creating things totally original, they were borrowing ideas and tropes too. They were drawing ideas from the pulp magazines of the 1920s, 30s, and 40s for a lot of their material. There are certain common threads in them, of course, because they all drew some inspiration from Lovecraft, Lord Dunsany, and Robert E. Howard. And nowadays, as we feel the need to create labels to put things in their right place on a website or a bookstore, we might call them sword and sorcery, or speculative fiction, or even phantasmagoria. But outside the board office of a publishing house, those ideas don't really mean very much. Or, at least they shouldn't. Over the past 5 or 6 years, I've been treating Appendix N like my personal reading list. And by far, some of my favorite of the works I've read have been Roger Zelazny's Amber Chronicles. 9 Princes in Amber, The Guns of Avalon, The Sign of the Unicorn, The Hand of Oberon, and The Courts of Chaos have been an incredibly indulgent read for me, and have snuck a lot of references and a lot of the structure of that series into this campaign. I don't think I'll say that the Amber Chronicles are even remotely the definitive source on my cosmology in this game. In fact, I've already deviated a lot from that canon. But I love the idea that there's a place like Amber somewhere in my world, and a place like the Courts of Chaos. Even the idea of kind of a platonic form of holy planes, from which all other planes are a shadow, appeals to me. Especially as that idea was developed in the Hand of Oberon. But let's just say that they are far from the whole picture of what I'm imagining here. In any case, if there's one thing I'm desperately hoping to accomplish with this ramble, is to encourage you to go and check out Appendix N for yourself. Read some of that source material. You'll thank me for it. Especially as it lets you get back and see the very roots of D&D, and some of the other media you've enjoyed too. If you're a big fan of the Myst video game series, you're already swimming neck deep in Amber. Anyway, I'll get off my soapbox now and get back to the story. The tires squealed as the van drifted dangerously close to the side of the road. Miria swore and fought with the wheel until she'd managed to straighten it out. As soon as she had the van under control, she pulled over to the edge of the road, braking gently and taking a ragged breath as she wiped some of the tears from her eyes. Miria, are you all right? What happened?
I'm sorry. I'm really sorry. I just got lost in a memory for a moment. This place, it reminds me of home. Maybe a little too much.
Are you tired? Do you need a break? You can talk me through how to operate the vehicle if you like. I can take a turn.
Thanks, Edryk. I think I need a break.
Let's get out and stretch our legs. I don't think I've ever felt so cramped in my life. Miria staggered out of the front seat of the van, wiping some tears from her eyes, shaking her head to banish the memory. Kale staggered out on wobbly legs, stretched his back, and adjusted his armor. Usually when people think of home, they don't cry so much. Are you okay?
I've been better. I promise that won't happen again. I grew up in a castle made out of crystal. Not like the one on the hill, but it reminded me of bad times.
Kale nodded, knowing better than to say anything at all. Well, I, for one, am glad we're stopped, at least for a moment. This place is beautiful. Perhaps we should consider a picnic, rather than eating in the back of the van again. I still don't know what to do with the lingering taste of those pork rinds I ate. Who would like those?
I'm pretty sure they were stale. I'm not exactly the best at figuring out old reckoning, but this says that it should have been sold before July 1974, and that was something like 4,000 years ago.
Fine, I'll settle for pemmican and cheese at this point anyway. Just let's not get back in the Ford for a few minutes, please. They all settled on the side door of the Econoline, passing a waterskin back and forth, picking through the dried nuts and jerky they used for rations, enjoying the silence and the peace of the jeweled forest all around them, each of them becoming in their own way acutely aware of the sounds and rhythm of the nature around them, the unearthly birdsong, the buzz and hum of jeweled insects. And then came the heavy thud, and another, the sound of something massive moving nearby, and with it a sound like the gentle tinkling of metal. And then the creature emerged from the underbrush. At the shoulder it was almost up to their waists, a quivering nose on a triangular head, a long, sinewy body, far too many legs. It looked for all the world like an outsized weasel, its hide a shimmering gold that caught the waning light and sent sparkles through the air around it. When its heavy forepaws touched down on the cobblestone, it came with a leaden clank and the sparks of metal. In fact, static electricity fairly crackled across the entirety of the creature's pelt. The creature looked at them and peeled its lips away from massive, shining metallic teeth, letting out a hiss. On second thought, let's get back into the Ford. Swords Against Madness is played, written, and performed by Brian C. Rideout. Editing, mastering, and audio production were from Stormhead Productions. All sound effects are licensed from Pixabay. This episode included the song Classic Metal Chugga Chugga by John Cohen, used with permission, as well as King Edward by Mr. Smith, a Creative Commons by attribution song released through the Free Music Archive. It also includes the song Acid Core by Jumping Bunny, Crystal by Tyler Gill, Punk Rock by Alex Grohl, The Enchantrix by Obliques, Turkish Marketplace by Simon Le Grec, Arabian Nights AR2 by Antipodian Winter, Cyberpunk Futuristic City Music by Impulse Music, Dark Suspense Trailer by Nastal Bomb, Japan Background by Yellowbird Beats, Outlaws Reckoning by Mood Mode, Opus 7 Pop Rock Metal by Christian D, and Stylish Blues Rock Wild West by Brightest Avenue, all courtesy of Pixabay. I want to thank you all for being so patient with me. I'm afraid my kids brought home not one but two viruses, both of which had left me with laryngitis, thus the week-late episode. I would also love to try a little experiment with you all if you're game. For the next handful of episodes, I'd like to collect your questions. Find me on X at SwordsVMadness, email me at swordsvmadness@stormheadproductions.ca, or check out my Stormhead Productions channel on YouTube. And drop me any question you'd like about solo gaming, swords and wizardry, Swords Against Madness, and I'd love to create a bonus episode to answer them all. I love talking to you guys. You can find me at any of those places, and I want to hear from you. In the meantime, play hard, roll high, and think weird. Thanks for listening.